Okay, now hopefully this is. It should just give us a little click every half hour. That's one of the start was. I think we are all set. So,
Joanne.
license plus. But just to start with, I said it before for people watching. Before we go into anything, again, I think it's important just to put out all the stress and all the anxiety and all the nonsense that we have to deal with every day. Take it out of your minds for a few minutes, please, because these are people just like us. They care about the same things as us. They live the same lives as us. But because they were able to take that stress and ego and nonsense that we have to deal with every day and put it out of their heads and rise above it, they were able to see their place in history in the world, and they were able to accomplish and to see the most amazing things. So I hope we can just focus on that for now. But without any further ado, today I'm interviewing my friend Emily. So we'll just go with Emily for now? Or?
Yeah.
Very excited for this, also very nervous, but let's just get started. Tell me about growing up. Where did you grow up?
Sorry, you can cut out the laughter, can't you?
I'm not going to.
I grew up in Leyton, East London. I'm a Leyton girl. Yeah, my mum is originally from Iraq. She came over to the country as an asylum seeker. My dad is of British ancestry. So yeah, but Leytonstone, born and raised.
And did you have a fairly normal upbringing in Leytonstone?
Normal for, I think, yeah, a lot of working class people with kids in the inner city. Like, you know, my mum was a single mum, and she had to deal with quite a lot growing up. You know, a lot that's really quite humbling when you get to an adult, when you look back on it, to go through what she went through, and then she eventually worked her way up to be one of really high up in the trade union movement. She herself was a socialist, is a socialist. My granddad is a member of the Iraqi Communist Party, and a lot of his brothers were revolutionaries in the Iraq 1958 revolution. So I come from a very heavily politicised background, and my mum, she never forced us to have the beliefs she did, but we were constantly around people, you know, revolutionaries, artists, intellectuals, thinkers. So it wasn't ordinary in that way. So I had quite an extraordinary background in that. Like from a young age, I was surrounded by people from all different walks of life, of all different kinds of experiences, but very ordinary in a sort of material way. And that, yeah, times were tough. And me and my brother, we didn't have much.
So you spoke specifically about the 1958 revolution. Did that impact your family a lot then?
So in July 1958, the Iraqi popular movement did away with the Hashemite monarchy, which was installed by the British Empire. And for a short period of time, it was like a very blissful period in Iraq. So Abdul Qasim was the prime minister, and he was on like a sort of multi-platform government. So most like the communists were in power, other parties were in power. In Iraq, the communist party is like the Labour Party here. Iraq had a massive million-wide communist movement. It was one of the most powerful communist movements globally. And then, unfortunately, the Baathists were also gaining power as a response to colonialism. So, like this very...
Baathists is like the
Saddam Hussein, yeah, Arab nationalism, very ultra-patriotic. And eventually, yeah, the Baath Party led a coup and executed Abdul Qasim, the Prime Minister, on live television. And then slowly started gaining power. My nan said she always remembers the time that they knew that they were about to enter a dictatorship. Like, they were sitting and watching TV in Baghdad, and Saddam Hussein listed in the names of a group of people from his government and asked them to stand up. And then he denounced them as, like, you know, enemies of the state and blah, 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 and asked them to leave the room. And then it's like the whole vibe changed, and they just felt chills. Yeah, they had my family, and my family knew at that point everything that they'd feared was now come true. They were under a dictatorship, and my mum grew up and her brothers grew up under the dictatorship.
That must have had a big impact on them. Is that when they
Yes.
had to like flee?
So they were in the Iraqi Communist Party youth, and they'd like a really lovely childhood, and then things were becoming more and more bleak and dark. Like also they were getting older, and the Ba'ath Party took them young kids, and armed them and things like that. So there was that. Eventually, a list came out of 20 names, and my granddad's name was on one of them. And they had to literally, over the course of the week, pack up all their stuff and just had what they had in their bags and leave. And they were pursued by the secret police on the way to the station, the airport. My mum's uncle, who helped them escape, was then tortured for information on their whereabouts. But they made it safely, thankfully, to the UK.
By the skin of their teeth or something?
Yeah. And
they did?
Yeah, me too. It was hardest on my mum because she was actually at home with flu at the time, and she saw her mum packing. And at that time, everything had to be kept secret from my mum and uncles. So my granddad was organising against Saddam Hussein. Like, he literally built a bed frame and hid like contraband literature, like Marx, Engels, Lenin, like within the bed frame, and was smuggling it out and helping the various like underground movements in Iraq.
So you've got a big heritage of supporting your people and caring, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would say all people are my people. But yeah, we're in community. We've got a big community heritage. And then after they came back to the UK, they were still in danger because Saddam's secret police were operating in the UK. There were guns in the Iraq embassy. The British state knew about this, and they threatened my first boss, actually, who was part of this. They set up this thing called Qadri, which was like a Iraqi democratic movement against Saddam Hussein in the UK in the 80s. And they were campaigning against Saddam in the UK, but his secret police were killing off Iraqi dissidents on British soil through poisonings. And they were still in danger.
You talk about the Iraqi Communist Party, and it was a million-strong movement at the time.
Yes.
I think for a lot of people here, like especially younger people, who think of communism, they just sort of think of like Russia. It's a very cultural thing. There's not much. Well, what did it mean to you or to your family?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, as you said, for young people, they might think, oh, communism, like, or is that all politics? But the Middle East is heavily politicised. Like, my mum's aunt Naima, she couldn't read or write. She was the eldest, but she could list every Iraqi politician. Like, it's a very politicised society, unlike the UK, which I think has been deliberately depoliticised. But also, I think for a lot of the countries that threw off the yoke of British or French or European colonialism, communism and socialism and all these radical ideas spread like wildfire because, they were free to explore these ideas and wanted a better world, a better society for themselves.
Of course. How can we not want that?
Yeah.
So you spoke a bit. That's obviously had a very heavy influence on you, but that's half your family side. And feel free to tell me I'm going too far or anything. But what about, you said your dad wasn't around much. So
no.
What was your relationship with the British side of your family?
My British side, again, quite militarised. So they were all in the army.
The British army.
Yeah, a lot of them did great things. Like my grandfather, he was a Royal Marine, and he was but unfortunately, they were quite conservative views that don't really match my own. My dad's kind of like a liberal, and I think he got with my mum as a way of he didn't get with her as a way of annoying his family, but they certainly weren't happy about it and them coming together.
How did your mum's family feel about that? Like, your dad was army background as well? My dad,
no, he's not. He struggled with addiction, and he still struggles with addiction. So he was never into the military or that. But
he was trying to rebel a bit.
Yeah,
already.
Yeah. My dad. So it's interesting seeing the different ideologies play out in my family. So my dad's family ended up very kind of quite lonely, quite paranoid, quite distant from the community, quite alienated, like lots of like breakdowns in relationships constantly. Whereas my mum's family, there was always this huge love and love for the community. There were always people around. There were always, this passion for like art, for literature, for music. Like,
And what do you think was that held them together? Was it the experiences that they'd been through? Was it their beliefs, or was it just the cultural thing?
I think all three: culture, beliefs, and what they've been through. They've bonded them, and I think seeing that, obviously, what am I going to go for as a young adult? Am I going to go for my dad's family where there's like rampant addiction, where they're tearing each other apart, where they're like really hostile and constantly paranoid about each other, or this kind of loving warmth of my mum's family? But I don't think that's symptomatic of being British. I think that's symptomatic of um, certain type of British, lifestyle. This kind of desperately trying to be middle class, and they've actually been able to reach it. But
Giving up everything in the process.
yeah, giving up, selling your soul to try and
Understand that. So how you had a very politicized childhood. How did that translate growing up in Walthamstow? Was it something people are, I'm so sorry.
You
Is
should
it
be.
not in the borough?
You should. It is. It's in the borough, but it's different.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not an East
If
London
some of the
boy,
lads from Leyton, if Leyton Loyal Soldiers heard you say that, oh my gosh.
Leyton loyal, are they loyalists?
They're not loyalists.
Well, I hope it's not. Because to any of my friends, I've got a lot of friends in Leyton. I always thought it was awful stuff. I'm sorry. But yeah, how was that with your very unique background and very clear awareness as a young person? How did that? There might be a little bang there on the door or something. How was that?
It was quite difficult because we'd had quite a rough childhood anyway, and everyone else around us was having rough childhoods. And because I was the older sister, I looked after my brother, and I had to take on a lot of care responsibilities from an early age for him. So I kind of had to grow up very, very fast, and then to see all the politics play out around me growing up, like all the troubles that the other kids in school, and feel that pain and see the pain that they were experiencing just because of their class. It was painful. Like, no child should have to go hungry. No child should be moved from care home to care home and not be able to settle down. No child should feel left out or cold and alone. The way I saw working class children growing up, and in fact, it's probably got worse now than it was in the 90s.
So, how was school then? With all that?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I was just lucky to be just gifted academically, so I just didn't need to try. Like, I'm good at memorising things, so school was.
It went well for you.
No, I didn't fit in. I was the outcast. I was a bit of a loner. But yeah, I was good at.
You succeeded at the scholastic
academic
side.
Yeah.
And did you go on to secondary school?
Yeah, I went to secondary school, and I didn't want to go to uni, but because of my mum's culture, they kind of like really emphasise uni as the only pathway.
Strong on education.
Yeah, very strong in education, and I really didn't want that because I was still hurting from a lot of stuff in my childhood. I was still very lost. I was still very I was a bit of a lost girl from like 18 upwards. But I didn't want to go to uni. I wanted to work, but my mum forced me to go to uni, and I dropped out 3 times. So.
And what do you think? Just because you weren't ready for it, you had to drop out, or was it the culture at uni, or was it just it was where you were?
Both. Yeah, I had some unfortunate relationships that weren't. Yeah, I had a couple of relationships that were abusive, and that kind of threw the span in the works. But I also just wasn't ready. My mind was I was a bit of a mess. Like a lot of young people are in their 20s. You present you're 18 and you've got to choose what you're going to do for the rest of your life. But if you've come from if you're working class and you've come from a lot of challenging and complex issues, you're going to be less sure of what you want to do.
You make that decision when you're already just trying to survive.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Was there anything that you remember being focused on? Like uni wasn't really doing it. Was there like any sort of goals that you had in mind at that sort of time, or was it just you were just trying to get through?
Activism. I was I was in Leeds Uni Occupation. So in 2011, I believe, or 12, loads of universities started. Loads of universities sort of started occupying the uni when they brought in uni fees. Started making loads of cuts, like cuts to the services, taking away like loads of courses that didn't make money, Mickey Mouse courses. So yeah, we occupied the uni, and yeah, that kind of started me down that road of.
Was that at the time? Because I was talking, Jim was asking me about this stuff, and I didn't. I knew vaguely about it because I would have been quite young. When it was that the like student movement protest and stuff?
Yeah, it was massive. It was loads of unis, where it occupied. Leeds Uni was quite interesting because some of the buildings had been built in the 60s when there were also massive student occupations. So they were literally designed to be unoccupiable with like multiple entrances and staircases. Yeah.
You had some planning to do that.
Yeah. We occupied the main building. We didn't get any of those buildings, unfortunately.
Were you happy? Did you have a lot of hope at that time?
Yeah.
What was going on?
Yeah, because we'd obviously been on the back foot for a long time. Like we protested against the Iraq War. Obviously, Israel and Palestine is very big on the news at the moment. I remember marching for Israel and Palestine when I was just yay high.
Israel and Palestine. So, you were very.
Yeah, both sides. They've got a strong argument. No, for Palestine, obviously. Yeah. It felt like we can actually push back and win something. Unfortunately, we didn't.
Did things feel connected at that time?
Yeah. But unfortunately, we didn't win.
And what did not winning look like?
The occupation failed. We were turfed out by the police. Other universities were also turfed out by the police.
Was it quite heavy-handed?
It wasn't so bad in Leeds, but in some universities, it was really like they went in with battering rams, and yeah, they were really pushed around. But yeah.
So how were you feeling after that? That's obviously a bit of a defeat. It's gonna affect you emotionally, especially if you put a lot of hope into it. What was your thoughts at the time?
I mean, it was a bit like having a come down. Like you have these highs and excitement of like actually trying to win something for young people in the country that will try and push back against this, these draconian measures on our education, and then it gets taken away. But also that communal living, because obviously you're in an occupation together, you're all living together, you're all arguing. There were lots of arguments, but yeah, lots of really stupid arguments. But it was a communal environment.
You worked through them together.
Yeah, everyone had different duties. There was like the security team. There was like the.
That must have been a very beautiful experience. Having grown up in London, and like you say, when people are so fragmented, and it's very hard to have that kind of thing, especially in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I suppose it was. I haven't really thought of it like that, but yeah.
So, what was your next steps after that?
I came back to London, where it was much warmer.
Yeah, is it a big difference?
I swear Leeds was the coldest I've ever been in my life. My mum pushed me to go to university again. I did. I went to go.
She wanted another one occupied.
Yeah, that's her plan. Just so me. I got a scholarship to Goldsmiths for my sins, and I did anthropology, which I really loved. But yeah, at the time, it was like I said, I was just increasing in lostness. Like I was just a very lost young woman.
You were looking for something more,
I suppose, and I was still trying to make sense of what was going on in the world.
And did you find what was your next step? Did you find yourself able to?
No, so I think for young people, especially young people who experienced a lot, and they young people in their youth and growing up with a lot, and seen a lot of complexity both in the family and the community and outside. You're dealing with more than the silver spoon middle class kid who's had everything handed to them since the year dot. And I think a lot of people feel lost. I think there's this expectation of your 20s to be this golden age, but I think
harder and harder for everyone now.
Exactly. I can't even imagine. If it was hard for me then, I can't even imagine how it is for young people in today's age. My heart really does go out to them.
But you have spoken to me about the anthropology stuff before. It did have some impact on you.
Yeah, I loved it.
Did you learn a lot? Did it
Yeah.
shape your? Because you said you were trying to understand things. Did it help you at all to understand the wider world that you were in?
Yeah. So I really loved anthropology because I love people. I love trying to find out what makes people tick and why things are. It's like I think it's important to try and if you want to create a better society, a world which holds people properly rather than just throws them out and leaves them to rot or sink or swim. Yeah, it's really important to learn. And one of my lecturers in Centre was David Graeber.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He was quite heavily involved in the I don't want to say in the promotion of what was going on in the job
Yeah.
as well as a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Very influential guy.
He was.
Did you build a relationship with him? Was he someone that influenced you personally?
He influenced me personally, so that his lectures were always really good. You know, he spoke a lot about, you know, the way, well, his book, 500 Years of Debt.
I haven't read it.
Okay, well, but yeah, I mean, all of my studies were really fascinating, and I think the way different cultures are, but also what unites us as people, but also what's been robbed from us as people, especially increasingly in today's world. This community of like early, you know, coming together early on, especially for child development. Community is so vital to child development. The saying it takes a village to raise a child is absolutely correct. And,
at least.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing the beauty in other cultures and what works, and also seeing the beauty in British culture and how that's been eroded.
It's one of the most eroded cultures now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's completely been smashed up deliberately.
I mean, even you see them talking about it on the most like on GB News and in like the Telegraph or everything else. Even they don't know what their culture is anymore, and those are the people that claim to bang the drum for it the most.
Yeah.
So it's very important to try to look back, try to understand. I clearly you did that in depth.
And what went wrong? And in my view, Thatcher was probably the biggest demon.
What makes you say that?
So she came out with the saying, "There's no such thing as society; there are only families," and that is probably one of the worst things you can ever say because in order for families to thrive and function properly, they need to be part of a community, a society.
Absolutely, can't be a family in a vacuum.
No, but she wanted this idea of like these alienated nuclear families makes it easier for them to control. Basically,
she just wanted to break this divide and control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Story is all this time. She just wanted to break up what we had into as
and she did
atomized as possible.
She closed down all the mines. She destroyed all the mining towns.
De-industrialized the country.
Yeah, she de-industrialized, but more than that, she broke up the soul of like these communities and the whole right to buy, which did elevate some families out of poverty. But then we they buy up properties and then the whole area would change, and then the social fabric of that area would transform completely. There was less council homes, so suddenly you just got allocated where you could be allocated. You couldn't stay within your community because everyone was buying up their council homes, so less and less.
Still happening now, just to an even greater degree. Now they're just knocking them all down completely.
Now it's just now there is people often say, "Oh, how I'm on the waiting list." There is no waiting list. There isn't.
So after anthropology, what did you do then?
I worked as an alarm system technician for several years, and I was doing activism on the side, but it just never felt enough. I was also kind of going down a spiral of self-destruction, but yeah.
And how did you get into alarms? That's quite a niche form of work.
I've always been really good with computers, and so I started off in these grim charity, fundraising jobs, and then kind of got into the call centres, and then from the call centres got into the tech IT call
Got
centres.
yourself a little trade.
Yeah, and then got from there went into the alarm systems call centres, and as a technician, I really liked it.
But you're trying to do activism on the side.
Yeah, always.
But it wasn't enough for you.
No.
What do you think? Did you know what you were lacking, or you just knew you wanted something more at that time?
I think I've seen the left just get defeated over and over and over, and this was pre-Corbyn, so even after Corbyn things look great, but at least during those Corbyn years people felt something. But for years there'd just been nothing but defeat, and it just felt like nothing. I couldn't give enough.
I know that's a very, very common feeling with people that care. Like how like you like you say, you just can't give enough. That not at least one person, or even certainly one person can't do enough. We can't look at it as an individual thing. We have to come together. We have to work harder.
Yeah, but if the movement is built on this idea of you've got to give everything you can,
it's going to burn people out. Jim was talking about that sort of stuff a lot as well. I think he had quite an interesting insight, because you know him as well. He goes very, very hard in and does a lot, and then he'll just step away for a year, a few years, and then he'll just jump right back in at the deepest end possible.
Yeah.
But he seems to be very comfortable with it, and it's not an ideal thing, because that can be very isolating. But I'm just trying to wonder what options we have.
I think, there's an element of sometimes you do need to withdraw for whatever reason, and that's absolutely fine. And that's why we do need a mass movement. So, as you said, there isn't just like this expectation that one person has to, or several people have to just give absolutely everything until you're burnt out and washed up. And I think that definitely contributes to the self-destructive cycle that's going down.
So you were experiencing a bit of burnout?
Massively.
And how did that turn out for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I was experiencing a lot of issues in my personal life. Like I said, I was very lost. I myself was using a lot of drugs. Like I'd take speed in the morning to get myself up and energy through the day, and then Valium at night, and benzos, and find loads of like substances off the dark web. I didn't know what they were, but I just needed something to drown out the pain and just get me through the day and give me that energy. I lost loads of weight. I was just
something so many people go through. Everyone that I know, I would say, has to drown out the pain somewhere or another. I can't think of a single person that doesn't have to lean on something alone, which is so sad, so depressing. Because one generation ago, it wasn't the case. I mean, there was alcohol, and it was a big problem. But
I was counter-arguing as someone who now works in addiction. They do drown out the pain. I mean, alcohol was a big one. Drugs in the previous generation, massive. Work. And one of my addictions was work. I used to work myself absolutely to the bone. I was doing 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, just to keep myself busy.
Right, you're absolutely right. They were running themselves down just as much as you.
My mum did, and I watched my mum do it, and my grandparents, they all did it, and I learned that was just a coping mechanism that I learned from like my family. I mean, I was also around drugs from a very young age, with my dad and things like that. So
we just gotta fix that.